Olá, tudo bem? Bem-vindo ao meu programa semanal aqui no 247. Essa semana eu vou mostrar 3 coisas para você. Primeira reportagem é sobre como a mídia trabalha junto com a indústria de petróleo para confundir o público, para diminuir a importância das mudanças climáticas, para espalhar dúvidas sobre mudanças climáticas. E o segundo reportagem que vou mostrar é uma reportagem curta, feita pelo meu amigo Mike Fox, que já estava nesse programa, já entrevistei ele uma vez. Ele é o correspondente para The Real News aqui no Brasil. Ele viajou para a Bahia e passa o dia com alguns desses heróis do Nordeste, esses heróis voluntários, que vêm limpando esse óleo na ausência de uma ação do Estado, na ausência de um governo forte que coloca o Brasil acima de todos. A terceira coisa que vou mostrar para vocês é uma filmagem que eu fiz quinta-feira passada. Eu fui convidado para dar uma aula pública num bar no bairro do Vila Buarque, área central de São Paulo. Eu gostei muito. Espero que vocês gostem e uma boa tarde, um bom domingo para todos e todas de vocês.
Chicago. He said,
In the fall of 2018, the UN Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change held a press conference to announce a dire warning. The panel said governments have only 12 years left to significantly reduce carbon emissions, or severe droughts, storms, and rising sea levels risk hundreds of millions of lives.
The pledges that governments have made over the last 3 years are not enough to keep warming below 1.5 degrees C.
How did the mainstream media cover this ominous prediction?
CNN covered it for only 1 minute and 8 seconds, and Fox News covered it for only 5 minutes. 5 minutes! That mostly involved guests bashing the IPCC.
Monday morning after that, we looked at the homepages of 50 top newspapers in the U.S. Less than half of them had that story on their homepage. So most of them just weren't giving it high billing.
Lisa Hymas is director of the Climate and Energy Program at Media Matters for America, a liberal media watchdog in Washington, D.C.
And even the coverage that we did get on that report, it was sort of a spike, and then the coverage went back down. So the coverage isn't being sustained.
But 2018 was an alarming year on the global warming front. In the U.S., 2 powerful hurricanes slammed into the East Coast, while fires burned down almost 2 million acres of California's forests. These disasters alone cost $54 billion in damages. Droughts hit Europe, Australia, South Africa, and Argentina, while floods struck Japan, India, and China, and more recently, the American Midwest. Powerful cyclones recently leveled parts of Africa. 2018 was the 4th hottest year on record, with carbon emissions hitting a new high.
The big picture is that the mainstream media are not covering climate change with the frequency and the intensity that it deserves. This is a major crisis, and it's not being covered like a crisis.
Moreover, Media Matters has done studies that reveal something else.
The mainstream media too often doesn't connect climate change to extreme weather events. So whether those are hurricanes or wildfires, heat waves, droughts.
So the problem isn't so much that there isn't any news coverage about climate change.
Michael Mann is one of the world's leading climate scientists. He works at Penn State University.
The problem is that we're not seeing the sort of coverage that we should be seeing among the largest networks, the major nightly news programs and cable news programs. This is the biggest threat that we face, climate change, and it should be the lead story on every news program.
Instead, since 2016, now President Donald Trump's antics have dominated the news cycle.
Donald Trump's latest silly tweet of the day is entertaining. important. But why does the media have to spend 100 times as much on that stuff as they do on the single greatest threat that we face?
The media's obsession with Trump definitely makes its climate coverage worse. A lot of the times when climate change gets covered, it's just around Trump. It revolves something he said or something he did or a stupid tweet that he sent. So Trump really is distorting the coverage, and I think that's just, the media just can't get enough of this guy.
Is the media's spotty coverage of climate change why people aren't more alarmed about the threat it poses?
I think the poor media coverage of climate change definitely contributes to the problem that a lot of Americans don't recognize how serious the issue is.
Although recent polls show 70% of Americans believe climate change is happening, a Stanford ABC poll found 44% felt global warming is a longer-term problem, while another found 50% never or rarely speak about global warming.
My sense is that in the heartland, whether it's the US heartland, whether it's Canadian heartland, even Europe, that people are not really getting the full message that there's a fundamental change to the Earth system underway, folks.
Journalist Andrew Revkin has reported on climate change for more than 3 decades, including 21 years for the New York Times. Today, he works for National Geographic.
Meaning no new normal sea level for centuries to come. Meaning no easily predicted weather patterns. Meaning that your coastal vulnerability to storms gets really amplified by that sea level rise. So where we used to build houses, it will no longer be feasible to do that. That message is not really out there.
While the New York Times is one of the best mainstream media outlets to cover climate change, Revkin says the topic was still often a hard sell to the paper's editors.
As you're pitching a story as a reporter to your editor, and then she's pitching it to the front page editors, they're always saying, well, where's the front page thought? That was actually a term of art in the newsroom at the Times. Well, where's the front page thought in that? Didn't we just write last year that Greenland's melting? You know, what's new? And well, it's melting more. Okay, but that's not a front page story. So that kind of exercise got to be really frustrating.
Yet newspapers and television have also been a convenient vehicle for the oil industry and its supporters to spread doubt and denial that global warming is real.
And the media, to some extent, has been complicit with that, playing to sort of the fallacy of false balance.
A good example is the editorial page of the Wall Street Journal, the most powerful business newspaper in the world.
It's a tragedy that the newspaper that reaches the largest cross-section of our business community, the people making business decisions on a day-to-day basis, the Wall Street Journal, has used its editorial pages to promote climate change denialism and to sow doubt and confusion. And it's difficult to actually estimate how much damage that has done.
The Wall Street Journal's bias is not surprising, given it's owned by the billionaire Rupert Murdoch, who controls the most aggressive media empire in the Western world, an empire that includes Fox News. Fox News reaches 95 million U.S. households.
I would say, hands down, in major media, Fox News is the worst. They often have on climate denial. They have people who just dismiss the problem, make fun of the solutions. I mean, that's not really a big surprise coming from Fox News.
There's the large cross-section of the American public that basically has been subject to this brainwashing by the Murdoch media empire, and it's very difficult to bring them back into the fold on the side of science and reason.
One problem is Fox News and other media outlets receive advertising from the oil industry, as well as sectors which rely on fossil fuels, like the auto industry. One 2015 study by Media Matters revealed that at critical times, CNN viewers saw 5 to 10 times more advertising from the oil and gas industry than climate change-related reporting.
They are so reliant on that fossil fuel money that one can't help but suspect that that has led to a dilution and a diminution of their willingness to cover this problem.
Consequently, the media rarely investigates the power that fossil fuel industries hold over political systems around the world.
One of the stories that's really hard to get covered is just the political influence of the oil industry and how it's affecting government policy.
Keith Stewart is an energy analyst with Greenpeace Canada in Toronto.
I occasionally say it's time to separate oil and state. Because in the way that the church and state used to be semi-fused, we now see that with the oil industry. In the US, you've got the influence of the Koch brothers, you've got the influence of the American Petroleum Institute, the Exxonmobil, whose CEO was first Secretary of State for Donald Trump.
I don't think the mainstream media have ever adequately dug into the influence that corporate America has had on climate policy.
Another story the mainstream media gave little play to was how Exxon, going back to the 1970s, conducted extensive research on whether fossil fuels might cause global warming.
And in fact, you can find internal Exxonmobil memos where their own scientists in the 1970s were referring to the threat of climate change as potentially catastrophic.
Well, the New York Attorney General filing a lawsuit against Exxonmobil, accusing the multi-billion-dollar oil and gas company of defrauding its investors by downplaying the financial risk of climate change to its business.
But the company hid this research from the public and instead embarked on a decades-long campaign of denying the link.
I think the media, the mainstream media, definitely is not doing enough to explain how the fossil fuel sector has caused the problem, has tried to conceal the problem.
Today, although the media rarely denies climate change is real, business coverage of the oil industry rarely mentions global warming will impact this sector's future.
And it's not part of the main reporting on the oil industry, where what we should be talking about is this is a sunset industry. Not going to shut down tomorrow, but it's got to be shut down in the next, by the mid-century, if we're going to have any hope of avoiding catastrophic levels of warming.
Or the media discourages governments from taking dramatic action to fight climate change.
What I sometimes call the softer form of climate change denial, which is to not outright reject the scientific evidence, because that's not credible anymore. People are seeing the impacts of climate change play out in real time on their television screens. So instead, there's been this move towards saying, well, it's happening, but we're not sure how much of it is due to human activity, and it'll probably be good for us, and by the way, it'll destroy the economy if we do something about it. When the irony, of course, is that what will destroy the economy is not acting on climate.
Man issues a dire warning, mostly ignored by mainstream news.
If we had acted decades ago, our carbon emissions, the curve, the bending down of the curve would have been a bunny slope. We could have mildly, sort of gently come down and transitioned away from fossil fuels toward renewable energy. Now, because of decades of delay, bought by fossil fuel industry propaganda and a media that too often has wittingly or unwittingly played into their agenda of false balance and inaction. What that's bought us now is a trip down the double diamond slope. We have to now bring our carbon emissions down dramatically over the next 10 years if we are to avert catastrophic climate change.
This is Miguel and Barbara, two members of the Coastal Guardians. That's a group of more than 200 volunteers that self-organized in the state of Bahia over WhatsApp to respond to the disastrous oil spill that's been covering Brazil's coastline. The spill has impacted more than 600 locations over 10 states, stretching 1,500 miles. It's mind-boggling, and it's far from over. The Brazilian government says that 4,500 tons of oil debris has now been cleaned, but there's still so much more. We're headed north from Bahia's capital, Salvador. We pull off the main road toward the town of Diogo. First stop, we're dropping off equipment. Government cleanup crews and teams of volunteers have been tackling the oil since it first appeared 2 months ago, but many did so without adequate tools to protect themselves. And oil It's toxic. In the short term, contact with this stuff, which lets off fumes of benzene, can cause headaches, shortness of breath, nausea, and diarrhea. In the long term, cancer. It's not good. The Guardians have been collecting donations of equipment, and they're sharing them with people looking to lead teams to clean up the coast. People like Digone.
Yeah, this 4-kilometer stretch is bad off, because no one goes there. Lots of bits of oil, and I've been picking them up little by little.
He's walked the whole northeastern coast of Brazil, but that was before the spill.
When an area near the city gets hit with oil, people get together and they pick it up. But when it's far from the city, the oil stays there. It's just stuck. I'm someone who likes pristine nature. Those are the most beautiful spots, and right now, I can only imagine they're covered in oil. There's no one there.
They leave him with masks, gloves, and other gear, and then we're off, headed north to the village of Subaúma. Today's not a cleanup day. We're here to check the status of the spill, particularly in the mangrove forests north of town. We don't expect to see much oil here. We're wrong.
Look at that.
Beachgoers swim in the pools next to rows of drops of oil that came in on the tide. The endless lines of oil run for miles up and down the coast. Most will never be picked up, being buried in the sand, leaching toxic components potentially for years.
Esse é novo, então? Esse aqui é novo. Aqui, ó. Esse que estão brilhando, esse é o novo.
Yeah, this is new. That shiny stuff, that's new. It wasn't here.
That's Geraldo Santana Brito. He's our guide. We roll over the beach, the heavy tires kicking up pieces of oil and flinging them into the air mile after mile. North of town, oil slick covers many of the tide pools.
This is the most evil oil right here, because it dissolves, and there's a very high presence of the hydrocarbons.
It's mixed with shells and rocks. It clings to the mangroves. These are sensitive ecosystems, home to oysters and crabs and the birthplace of many fish. Very few of these mangrove forests up and down the Brazilian coast have been cleaned. Meanwhile, old oil still covers the rocks alongside tide pools where beachgoers swim.
It's going to continue until they figure out what's causing it. And they haven't figured it out yet. It's really hard.
Thicker globs of oil are still washing up on beaches around the country, just not here.
A gente viu situações bem críticas ao longo desses
We've seen some really severe situations over the last 2 months, with very big globs of oil, and now you can see that there are these small remnants which are no less harmful or toxic.
This is the reality of northeastern Brazil. It's just one beach, along a coastline stretching 1,500 miles. Michael Fox, The Real News, Bahia, Brazil.
Vila Buarque é um dos meus bairros favoritos da cidade de São Paulo. Eu morei aí em 2005, 2006. Tem um bar chamado Bar do Mauro, um bar que eu gosto porque tem muita música na máquina lá, que sempre tenho um outro amigo bebendo lá. Um dos clientes do bar montou uma quadra no parede e agora 1 ou 2 vezes por semana tem um tipo de aula pública. Eu já vi aulas no bar sobre futebol feminino. Um amigo meu deu uma aula sobre Bauhaus. Não precisa ser especificamente político. Mas na quinta-feira passada eu fui convidado de dar uma aula pública sobre a questão dos novos ditaduras na América Latina e a influência imperialista dos Estados Unidos sobre eles. Foi um prazer. Ok. Eu primeiro, Mauro, eu gostaria de pedir uma cachaça São Francisco com limão espremido, tá?
Aqui é a Unimauro, né? A Universidade Livre do Bar do Mauro, né? Na verdade, esse bairro aqui tem uma vocação muito para uma boemia intelectual. Nós temos aqui a Escola de Sociologia e Política, temos a Mackenzie, temos a Escola da Cidade, temos a Escola de Filosofia da USP, onde teve aqui a Maria Antônia, a Batalha da Maria Antônia. Então esse bairro sempre foi permeado por muito debate político. E com o tempo isso foi se desgastando, foi gentrificando também o bairro, muitos bares que existiam foram se transformando em lugares padronizados, comprados, fora desse debate. E eu aqui, quando frequentava aqui, eu dando aula, sou professor convidado aqui da Sociologia e Política, comecei a trazer meus alunos para cá no intuito de que dentro de uma concepção de que o ambiente não formal de aprendizagem faz com que a aprendizagem que você teve em um determinado local, sendo de uma maneira informal, cria um tipo de debate muito maior. Então, se você vai assistir uma peça de teatro, se vai assistir um filme, um debate, e depois você sai com pessoas que estavam lá e sentam numa mesa de bar para debater sobre o que viram, então vocês vão ter muitas visões diferentes, vai multiplicar, vai sedimentar muito mais o conhecimento. Então a Unimauro veio nisso, nessa frequência que nós temos aqui, sempre os debates muito calorosos aqui sobre diversos assuntos, dentro da ciência política, da arquitetura, de todas as análises geopolíticas. E nós vimos a necessidade, chegou um ponto de criar uma lousa, para nós mesmos conversarmos com a lousa. E aí progrediu para a gente falar assim, não, já que a gente tem uma lousa aqui, por que não ter pessoas mesmo para trazer, para dar aulas, pessoas que têm uma área de conhecimento, para uma troca de informação, fora daquele ambiente acadêmico, formal, pessoas que estejam mais inteiradas muitas vezes. Aqui tem pessoas que vieram, que têm pesquisas, doutorados para apresentar aqui, mas pessoas que estão inteiradas de um determinado movimento e que as pessoas precisavam socializar. Então aqui é um lugar de socialização de informação, muito mais do que de transmissão de conhecimento. É um lugar de debate. E a Unimauro está aí para isso, para angariar, ainda mais nesse período de perseguição ao pensamento, de perseguição às instituições formais. Esse é um lugar também, acima de tudo, de resistência onde a educação, onde a formação das pessoas seja a coisa mais importante.
E não é só eu, tem pessoas da direita nos Estados Unidos que falam isso também. Essa tentativa de golpe, colocando Guaidó como presidente do Venezuela, foi um dos piores erros ou cagadas do político estrangeiro dos últimos 20 ou 30 anos dos Estados Unidos. E muitas cabeças rolou, porque a inteligência deles era ruim. Me lembra do que aconteceu no Iraque, depois da invasão, depois do tiro a Saddam Hussein. Tinha um cara que era professor de matemática do Massachusetts Institute of Technology, né? Faculdade preferida daquele cara do Chaves, que sempre fica falando Massachusetts. Ele não tinha viajado. Esse cara não tinha entrado no Iraque em 25 anos. Ele convenceu todo mundo na CIA que ele tinha base no Iraque. E a CIA deu conselho para Bush, colocou ele como presidente interino do Iraque. Ele chegou lá e ninguém sabia quem ele era. Ele era um picareta, sabe, que enrolou a CIA. Eu acho que a situação de Guaidó é parecida. A inteligência estadunidense estava ruim. Ele tinha qualidade de inteligência baixíssima, achando que era só reconhecer o cara e o povo iria atrás dele. Não funcionou, como você falou. Só 20% das pessoas sabia quem ele era. Então, ele enrolou o governo dos Estados Unidos também, né? Foi um desastre. E foi uma vergonha. Ele é um esperto de mal, né?